show here, stop sharing my screen, and I'm excited to pass this over to Tim here. But first, I want to share a little bit about Tim. So Tim is a dynamic presenter, researcher, and thought leader on managing the people side of change. His work forms the foundation of the largest body of knowledge in the world on change management. Through public speaking and writing, he advances the discipline of change management as a structured, rigorous approach for driving business results. Tim has spoken to hundreds of thousands of people around the globe, enabling audiences with valuable data and actionable insights. So with that, take it away, Tim.
Very good. Thank you, Sam. Thank you all for joining us this morning. It's an honor to be here to share with you some thoughts on how to drive more change success within the state and within your organization. Before I get started, I do want to express huge gratitude to the team at Results Washington. This is some of the most professionally run conferences that I get to engage with, and it's just a blessing. So thank you to Alyssa and John and Sam. A particular thank you to Jeannie and Michelle, who will be providing the ASL interpretation today. We are talking about how multilingual change leaders activate change ecosystems to drive change success. And we are using multilingual as a metaphor here. We are not trying to take away from the unique challenges that the multilingual employees in our organization who speak two different languages, the unique challenges, but also strengths they bring to the organization. We're using multilingual as a metaphor to describe those different change discipline languages that will help our organization to advance and become who it wants to become. And the tagline "results happen together" for the conference really ties into the power of these ecosystems that we're going to unpack today. Because we are standing at a doorstep of change like we have never experienced. And I began using this slide back in 2015, and that was before a global pandemic made change the norm and expectation on a day-to-day rate. This notion of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, the VUCA world is the conditions in which we live. And then we had a global pandemic. And I use this analogy of an exit with no re-entry. And back in April 2020, I was on a webinar panel starting to discuss the impacts of the pandemic on organizations and change. And one of the other panelists used the phrase re-entry. And I am rarely at a loss for words, but I sat there dumbfounded thinking, an exit, when you're driving down Highway 5, you get off an exit, you get gas, you get back on the highway, that's re-entry. The organizations that we stepped out of when this global pandemic began were being repaved while we were at it. Workplaces were changing, organizations were changing. There are new expectations, new capabilities, and new conditions that we need to step into as organizations. And so as change agents and leaders in organizations, how are we going to adapt and adjust how we lead change in the face of these new conditions? Now, before we jump into the ecosystems, I'm going to share with you a phrase that I've been playing with for a little bit, because I think it's also part of the conditions we now live in. The phrase is this paradox, and I picked this up from Peter Drucker. The notion of how can we become both more productive and more human-centric at the same time? Is it possible, and is it worth it, and how can we thread the needle of increasing both human centricity and productivity of our organizations? And I really think that's the condition we set in front of today as leaders and as change agents. And I'll give you 2 reasons why. The first is illustrated in this cartoon from Idea Leap. And as soon as Jason put this cartoon up, I reached out to see if I could get permission, or Justin rather. What the illustration here is 2 pie graphs, and it's showing how leaders create value. In the top pie graph, you see that most of the value is coming through operations, with a small portion of value coming through change. But the realities of the conditions that we all navigate today is that a majority of the value that leaders are creating is coming through change now rather than operations, which means we need to figure out how to most effectively implement the changes we are trying to take on with the least amount of disruption and distraction to our people. More productive and more human-centric is going to be essential if we create value through change. The other side of the coin here around more productive and more human-centric lies at the individual employee level. And I'm going to use another image that I saw on LinkedIn from Zach Mercurio. And I reached out to him the day that I saw it get posted and said, may I have your permission to use this in my presentations? Because one of the challenges that each employee is navigating today in the organization is this need to feel like we matter. But mattering comes from both being valued and adding value. There's a human-centric side to being valued as an individual in the organization, but there's also a productive element of adding value to the organization, the mission, and the direction we're going. As a leader, as a team member, how do I create the environment and the conditions to ensure that our people both feel valued and know that they add value? Because when they feel like they matter, that's when we can overcome any obstacle in front of us. So that's the world we set in today. Change like we've never experienced, bigger change, faster change, more complex change. Change is the source of the value we're creating, and we have people that we need to help them feel like they matter in the organization. This creates an incredibly complex change landscape and environment. And I'm going to maintain that today's opportunities and challenges are multifaceted like they have never been before, where there are many moving parts, many interconnected pieces, dependencies amongst each of the changes we're trying to make happen within our department, within the state, within all of this change that's happening in our society. If our challenges and opportunities are multifaceted, we must figure out how to respond in a multifaceted way as well. And that's going to be the backdrop of these ecosystems. Now, what we have on the slide here is David. This is a sculpture by Michelangelo, a very famous sculpture of David. And you see a picture of his face and those eyes that we know are so famous about this sculpture. Now, the sculpture sets in Florence in the Duomo. And Florence, Italy was where the Renaissance began. And I don't know if you've ever wondered, I hadn't really wondered, why did the Renaissance start there? Luckily, Franz Johansson did some investigation and wrote a book about why the Renaissance started there. He called it the Medici effect. And here's what he says. When you step into an intersection of fields, disciplines, or cultures, you can combine existing concepts into a large number of extraordinary new ideas. So what happened in Florence is we had a funding mechanism that brought artists of all different shapes and sizes together. And so we had our sculptors and our painters and our musicians and our actors and our all sitting around having dinner and wine together. And it was that physical proximity that created the spark of innovation when these disciplines came together. Interestingly, science also provides us a story, an example where ecosystems become the spark of innovation. We can have two elements of science like material science and aeronautics, and they can begin to bump into one another. But it is that friction that creates the spark of innovation that gives us a new airplane skin. So in science, we see disciplines bump in together into one another to spark innovation. During the Renaissance, we saw artists drawn together with physical proximity. And in organizational change, we often see these breakthroughs occur in the projects and initiatives that we're trying to implement to advance our strategy in our organization. We see disciplines start to bump into one another: project management, change management, lean, talent, communications. And we get that friction that feels like tension at first, but often that is the spark. Now, Over the past number of years, we've often talked about how change management as a discipline intersects and interacts with a singular other discipline. So back in 2015, we contributed a chapter to a leading organization development textbook about how change management and organization development come together, how there are dimensions of difference, but certainly overlap in how they try to bring successful change to the organization. That same year, we contributed a chapter to a leading PM project management textbook. It was actually the project management textbook I used when I was doing my MBA. So it was kind of a neat full circle to get to write a chapter about how change management and the discipline of the people side of change comes together with project management, how we manage the technical side of our initiatives. And even then, we were advancing how change management and value selling, value engineering, value management on the technical side can come together to ultimately drive more successful results. There's a meta change ecosystem that has grown up in and across organizations. I'm going to draw the ecosystem for us, and I'll put change management in the middle because that's our discipline, and I'm the one that got to draw the slide. But start to look at the other disciplines that are emerging to help organizations navigate change. Innovation, strategy, transformation, benefit realization, project management, communication, talent, human capital, leadership development, org design, org development, org effectiveness, continuous process improvement, Lean Six Sigma. Each of these disciplines or capabilities have emerged with unique skill sets and expertise and experience, all aimed at helping the organization get better. All of them are certainly connected to change management because the human being is the unit of change, and that's what change management focuses on. But the disciplines are all interconnected with one another as well. This becomes that meta change ecosystem that if we can activate and harness inside the organization, we can create breakthrough change. Now we're going to use Poll Everywhere as an interactive polling tool to interact during the presentation. So for the hundreds of you that are dialed in from somewhere in the state of Washington, if you aim a browser window to pollev.com/prosci, pollev.com/prosci, that will take you to this interaction tool we're going to use. Leave that browser window open because it'll refresh with each new question. My very first question is just a bit of a warm-up for you. How do you take your coffee? Black, with cream, with sugar, with cream and sugar, or I'm not a coffee drinker. So you'll notice when you go to pollev.com/prosci, you get to indicate how you take your coffee, and the results are changing right there on the screen for us. All right, just over 100 have cast their votes. About 1/5 of us take our coffee black, about 1/3 with cream, 1% of you takes it with sugar, just under 1/4 take it with cream and sugar, and about 21% are not coffee drinkers. Very good. My second poll question, and so it has updated there on the screen for you, your browser window, is how many years have you been connected with the state of Washington? You'll have an open window, you type in a number and hit enter, and we're actually going to build a word cloud on the screen together. How many years have you been connected with the state? The numbers that get typed in the most get a little bit larger. 6, 5, a number of us that have been here for 1 year or 3 years. I see 12, I see a 35, I see a 27, a 28, a 40. Very good. So thank you. That's the way we're going to build a word cloud. Keep that browser window open. It's going to update again. Where are you connecting from today? So for this one, you will see a map of the state of Washington, and you're going to drop a pin somewhere in that state. I am actually connected to you from Boise, Idaho, so in the same region of the country for those who are up in the state of Washington. I know we have folks that are dropping their pins on the little US there on the bottom right, because I know because of the virtual environment, we have people connecting from all over. Very, very good. All right, what change disciplines do you experience the most often? So now we have a poll question that will tip us into change ecosystems and how we can start to activate and harness them. What are some of those change disciplines that you have the most experience with? Go ahead and type them into that pane, and they're going to grow on our screen. So the word cloud is growing with all of the numerous change disciplines that you all are employing to help advance initiatives and strategies in the organization. We have a lot of Lean Six Sigma, project management, process management, technology, engagement. I saw diversity in there, behavioral economics. That's kind of my background. All kinds of change disciplines that bring a unique set of skills, perspectives, experiences, and expertise to help the organization advance in a particular way. Whoops. So here are a number of those contemporary change disciplines that we're seeing in organizations today. Change management is certainly highlighted as the discipline that Prosci and I spend all of our time in, but you see continuous improvement, process management, Lean, Six Sigma. You start to see some of those human disciplines like human performance, talent, training, leadership development. We see things like benefit realization, project management, portfolio management, helping us manage more effectively all of the numerous initiatives going on. So that's the backdrop of these change capabilities. And I want to share with you a couple of examples that took us into the change ecosystem space. So here I am, probably 8 years ago, I get a phone call. Somebody says, "Hey, Tim, can you help us build a change management capability in the organization?" I say, "Yes, that's something I know how to do. We've been researching it for over a decade." And they said, "But here's the thing, Tim. It lives underneath an umbrella called organization and process optimization, along with a performance management capability, a strategy capability, and a project management capability." And I'm thinking that's a pretty interesting approach because now we have change management alongside other capabilities that will be critical for making the change come to life. A couple of weeks later, I get a call. "Tim, can you help us build a change management capability?" I say, "Yes, I know how to do that." They said, "Oh, but it lives under an umbrella called corporate core, along with analytics, problem solving, process management, and project management." Now I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern or a trend emerge that client after client, organization after organization reaches out and says, we are growing the change management capability alongside and connected to other critical change capabilities. And that's going to give us the change ecosystem. The change ecosystem we're going to define as that platform of several change capabilities intended to provide a more coordinated solution to help us support our change efforts so that we can drive more successful change outcomes. Now, I have that illustrated as sort of the roof. Holding up the roof are numerous pillars, and those are the change capabilities in the organization. It's that particular discipline or body of knowledge that we can use, and it's intended to address a particular facet of organizational performance or organizational change. These ecosystems, interestingly and probably not surprisingly, come in many different shapes and sizes. We can see them formally established with a name, a scope, a structure, and specific capabilities that are those pillars. We can also see more informal ecosystems where the capabilities exist and work with one another, but sometimes not as effectively as they could be if we haven't activated the system. And in large organizations, we actually see matrixed approaches, whether it's a center of excellence, a center of acceleration. We see a capability that can be aligned and show up in different functions or business units. Now, slide 21 is a bit of an eye chart. It is intended to be. It is in the materials, so you have access to it. These are just some example change ecosystems that I've collected to share back with you to give you an idea of some of the different assimilations of disciplines that organizations are starting to take on. So that second one on the list is called business services. It has project management, change management, communications, and business analysts. You see a couple of informal approaches with strategy, project management, change management, analytics, and ERPs. You see a whole host of change ecosystems called transformation. As I see, that's often a place where these capabilities come together. Various capabilities aimed at improving organizational performance and change outcomes. Now, in my experience, we support organizations across the globe and across industry to help drive more successful change outcomes. What I've spotted is that there are unique capability combinations based on the organizations themselves. If I am a software organization, I have a need for knowledge management, communication, agile, design thinking. But if I'm manufacturing widgets in a high volume commodity manufacturing plant, I have very different capabilities. I'm going to have a focus on quality, lean, Six Sigma, maybe supply chain. The external dynamics and the internal performance drivers of your department or your function, your organization, that is what drives the unique capabilities we need. And so I'm going to have this one up here for a minute to have you think about this question. What are the capabilities that our organization is assembling, has assembled, should assemble? So the way you're going to enter this is on a single line. You can put your organization, a colon, and then a list of those capabilities that you think would be important for your organization, given those, again, internal performance drivers and external pressures that are creating that landscape of change we all are working to navigate. As a professional services organization, we have a high emphasis on collaboration, communication, knowledge management, and asset management, development, right? Those are some of the particular capabilities that we have coming forward. Oh, sorry, this one's getting jumpy. There we go. King County, we have lean, equity, and social justice, a strategic matrix of disciplines versus ad hoc. We have continuous improvement and change management, DEI and lean coming forward, PSNS, CM, and strategic planning. At HCA, we have change management, project management, and process improvement. I see those three coming together quite a bit. What processes do we need to improve? How do we build what we need to do it? And how do we get our people there too? We see social justice showing up here a good number of times. Continuous improvement. Lean, change, and project management. Very nice. I'm going to try changing this one to a word cloud just to see what sort of. Lots of lean, lots of continuous improvement, lots of project management, and lots of change management. Helps us decide what to improve, helps us manage the technical side of those improvements, and helps us get our people there too. Very, very nice. So a lot of capabilities we are working to build and assemble. And I use the word assemble on purpose there because the next slide I have is a picture of a character from a movie. This is a picture of Benicio del Toro, the actor, from the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. I have two boys at home, so I'm a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This character's name is the Collector. He lives on a planet called Nowhere, and he collects oddities from around the world, or around the universe. That's why he's called the Collector. I use him here because I have seen many organizations collect these change capabilities without activating and harnessing the power of the ecosystem. We collect change management certifications, we collect project management certifications, we collect lean belts, we collect some talent training, but we don't activate and harness the power of that system. And that's where we want to go on the back half of this session, that coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. Henry Ford was an entrepreneur, and he sets that stage that we must go beyond collecting if we want to drive successful change in our organizations. So here's going to be the three challenges that we're going to experience to overcome. The first is confusion among the capabilities, that each of our change agents, our project managers may not know what our lean folks are doing. Our lean folks may not have any idea what the DEI team is doing. DEI may not have any idea how the collaboration function supports the organization. So we get confusion among the capabilities, we start to get siloed, non-collaborative execution, and we haven't taken a step forward to say, how does the system help us get better above and beyond each of those capabilities? Because if we can activate the system, we get better change execution. Albert Einstein tells us we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And this holistic ecosystem thinking is what we're going to need as we step forward. Franz Johansson already told us that it is at that intersection of fields and disciplines that we get the spark of innovation, those new ideas. And in terms of future readiness, I truly believe the winners of the future are going to be those who can outchange what's coming at them. And even in the public sector, even though we're not outchanging competition on the store shelf, we are working to outchange the various pressures, change landscapes, technological impacts, all of that swirl that's going around our organization. If we can not just collect capabilities, but activate and harness the power of the ecosystem, we've set ourselves up for success. So here's what we're going to do about it. Three big pieces. We're going to build a shared understanding across the capabilities. We're going to figure out how to integrate our activities on initiatives. And each of us are going to step into that challenge of becoming multilingual. Not necessarily our spoken language, although that's a huge advantage, but the languages of different change disciplines aimed to improve the performance of the organization. So I'll put us into this situation, a hypothetical situation. You're the Lean Six Sigma expert on an initiative that this corporate core ecosystem is rolling out in an organization. You're sitting around a table, getting to know your colleagues on the project. There's somebody who's there from the problem solving group, somebody from the data analytics group, somebody from the project management group, and somebody from the change management group. The question to reflect on is, how accurately could you describe what your colleagues from the rest of the ecosystem are actually doing? Early on, before we've matured and activated the ecosystem, we often see a lot of confusion across these capabilities. And so I'm going to introduce for you what I'm going to call the Change Ecosystem Alignment Framework. I do this on a blank piece of paper because most of you probably have a blank piece of paper. And if we can start to frame out our thinking for the ecosystem on a blank piece of paper, we can start to engage those around us. The first row on our 3 rows is why we do what we do. Can each discipline explain why it is they do what they do? And we're going to use a 2-by-purpose statement for that. The second is what we do. A concise description of what actions and approaches we will put into play to improve the success of this change effort, to advance the organization and the strategy. And third, how to engage us. What are some prompt questions that my discipline, me as a practitioner of Lean, could ask you as a project lead? And if you answered them back to me, I would understand when and how much I can help you. So that's our alignment framework. Why we do, what we do, how to engage us. Why we do what we do is that top row, and that's really around purpose. And I'm going to share with you a framework we use to drive alignment and coherence around purpose. It is called a 2-by-purpose statement. It's a very simple framework. To achieve what by doing what. To achieve what by doing what. It helps us get very crisp and clear on the result we are intending to create, and then the actual work that it's going to take to make it happen. One of the things we can watch happen is that project teams will define the two not by the outcome or the result, but by the activities and the work they're going to take on. The two is never to deploy an ERP. By deploying an ERP, we are going to try to achieve something as an organization. So I'm going to give you a couple example 2x statements, and then I'm going to have you write one into that polling application for a capability that you're familiar with. To achieve what by doing what? Here's my first examples for change management. To capture people-dependent project ROI by preparing, equipping, and supporting our people through the transitions they experience. That's my 2x statement for the discipline of change management. I've written one for Prosci, though. As a firm, we have a purpose to enable our clients to achieve more successful change outcomes by building individual and organizational change capabilities on a platform that's results-oriented, research-based, and holistic, and easy to deploy. And I've actually written one for me as an individual, as a person, to spark aha moments and insights by aligning how I tell stories with how human beings absorb, process, internalize, and act on information. Here's a couple more examples of disciplines that you might bump into: benefit realization, innovation, portfolio management. But notice in each case, the to achieve what goes first, followed by the by doing what to get that alignment around purpose. This slide is another one of those eye charts that was included in order to be part of your PDF materials. So you have access to a whole host of example 2x statements for a variety of contemporary change disciplines. So now let's go back to pollev.com/Prosci. Point to that browser window back to pollev.com/Prosci. And I'm going to have you write a to-by purpose statement. So use the syntax, put the capability, maybe it's lean, maybe it's design thinking, maybe it's data analytics, maybe it's project management, maybe it's process management, maybe it's DEI, maybe it's social justice, maybe it's communication, maybe it's collaboration. What's that capability that you are familiar with? And then see if you can articulate the purpose in that to achieve what by doing what syntax. I so appreciate the very first entry here: to promote a culture of innovation by increasing engagement of frontline workers. The people who understand where the issues and opportunities are the people who can help us solve them, especially if they feel like they matter. To achieve compliance with medical staff regulatory requirements by, so we're going to need a by on the back end of that. To promote diverse ideas through engagement of stakeholders. Nice. To provide project leadership by facilitating meaningful interactions. The emphasis is on the interaction and the achievement is project outcomes. Here's one for lean: to help other people make things better in their work by giving them the tools, resources, and support to make improvements. To continue to build a culture of respect and belonging by working together at all levels, internally and externally. To find the root cause by asking the hard questions. Very, very nice. So we're using it as a framework here in terms of driving alignment across an ecosystem. These 2x purpose statements become an incredibly powerful format for engaging teams, projects, your leaders. So we use them quite a bit, and hopefully you'll find value there too. To achieve what by doing what helps us describe that purpose. So if we were to take our ecosystem alignment framework, why do we do change management? To capture people-dependent ROI by preparing, equipping, and supporting our people on their change journeys. What do we do? Well, my answer for change management is we bring structure and intent to how individuals make change and how the organization implements change to ultimately increase the engagement, adoption, and usage of solutions by impacted employees. So that's kind of my concise capture of what we do. If I give you 3 bullets, 3 words per bullet. And then in terms of how to engage us as a change management discipline, these are the two questions I would ask and have you answer. How much of your expected results and outcomes depend on adoption and usage? And who has to do their job differently and how? If you can answer those two questions, I, as the change management discipline or practitioner, can step up and help you drive a more successful initiative. So the thinking would be, for your change capability that you're familiar with, how might you answer these same three questions? This is a visual reference. This is the Prosci unified value proposition that tells the story of successful change. It's about stepping out of a current state through a transition to ultimately reach an intended future state. Every change begins for a reason. They can be internal, external, they could be based in today, they can be based in the future, but there's always that reason. Every change has a technical side where we design, develop, and deliver a technical solution to meet those issues or opportunities. And every change has a people side where the people who have to bring the change to life engage, adopt, and use that new way of showing up. And when and only when those pieces come together do we get success on the initiative. The why we do what we do of change management, the what we do of change management, the how to engage us of change management is all tied to that very bottom arrow, the people side. So now let's go back to that hypothetical situation where we have 5 change agents from corporate core sitting around a table. Data analytics, problem solving, Lean Six Sigma, project management, change management, and each and every one of them could answer why the other discipline does what they do. They could give you the concise description of what they do. And they also know how to engage and interact with each other discipline because of those how to engage us prompt questions. This is the foundation of an activated ecosystem. When each of our change practitioners has at least a conversant understanding of the other disciplines at play that are helping that initiative and the organization move forward. This is probably one of my favorite kind of snapshots out of this entire presentation, because if 3 or 4 of us can sit around a table, each bringing our discipline to the table and arrive at that shared understanding about how we each uniquely contribute to successful change, that's where the power comes. So that's building shared understanding. And we use that in alignment framework to put that in motion. The second piece is figuring out how to integrate on initiatives, because each of our change initiatives will probably need some project management, some data analytics, some problem solving, but the amount is going to be different. What I have illustrated here is Project A and Initiative B, with representations of each of the capabilities that make up that ecosystem. But Project A and Initiative B have different amounts of the capability they're going to need. And that question that we had at the bottom of our alignment framework, that's the how we engage us. If I'm going to figure out how much change management this project needs, my first question is, how much of the outcomes depend on people changing how they do their jobs? If this is a technological hygiene project with only a few people being impacted, there will be a very small change management demand. But if this impacts mindset and behavior and how people show up and engage with one another, there will be a significant dependence on how people show up and a very large need for change management. So over the course of a project or initiative, if I were to explore those 5 change capabilities and think about how they live across a project lifecycle, I can start to make sense of when and where each capability shows up. I have a project lifecycle of initiate, plan, design, develop, deploy, sustain, and each of those capabilities will show up across the entire lifecycle, but they will show up in different amounts depending on those engagement questions. So we are now unfolding the capabilities we have in front of us across a project lifecycle. And I'm going to show you how we can actually do this on a wall using sticky notes. If I were to bring together each of the capabilities that are part of driving change in my organization, I would have them capture the actions, the contributions, and the questions they have across that life cycle of the project. I had the honor to get to do this with a high-tech manufacturing firm where we had lean and project management, change management, collaboration, sustainability, communication, and talent all around the table. Each of the projects we set up, and we gave each of the capabilities a different sticky note to capture their actions, their contributions, or their questions, to start to create a mapping of when, as a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, am I going to have specific actions, specific contributions, or specific questions across that project lifecycle. And all of those capabilities started to contribute to when and where they impacted the change. I'll ask you this question. Who would you make sure you have in the room if you were doing this sort of a plotting? If I were able to get the various capabilities that each are trying to help drive change and strategy forward in the organization together, to say, when do you have actions? When do you have contributions? When do you have questions across that project lifecycle? That coordinated view is what it is we're trying to create. I'm going to flip this one to a word cloud really quick. So our executive leadership, our staff, our project leads, key stakeholders within the organization and the business, frontline workers, it's representation from where the change is happening. And look what happens when we start to can pull these pieces together. What you see on slide 47 is just an illustration. Across the top, we see initiate, plan, design, develop, deploy, sustain. We did this across a huge wall at this client that I was able to facilitate this exercise at. And we began putting these sticky notes up on the wall, so that we could have a good sense for when project management, when collaboration, when talent, and when sustainability each contributed to the health of the project lifecycle. I'm going to ask you one poll question here, and then I'm going to show you a picture of my favorite band. If your ecosystem in your organization was supporting an initiative, and you were able to plot out the actions, questions, and contributions of each of the various change disciplines who are supporting that change, what would be the impact? And I'll tell you what, here's a picture of my favorite band. This is the Avett Brothers playing at Red Rocks in 2019. When the band comes together, the sound, the emotional journey you experience is so far beyond any one of those individual instruments. When they're playing and they are on, it is an activated ecosystem of music and experience. That's the value we start to see. All right, let's jump over to this one. I'm going to make this a word cloud for the sake of time. We start to see understanding, synergy, success, teamwork, collaboration. That's the value when we can bring the unified view of how each of us contributes to moving a change forward. In the same way, when that band is on, we know how each of the musicians is contributing to that evening. My last observation here will be around the notion of becoming multilingual. And again, we're using this as a metaphor in terms of the change disciplines or change languages. When I was at that client and we did the exercise of plotting the impact of each capability across the project lifecycle, it was a unique organization where when you met somebody there who is a change practitioner, they would actually introduce themselves with their professional major and their professional minors. So this person would say, my professional major is change management, my professional minors are organization development, leadership and development, and talent. And they actually built learning paths for all of their change agents to become cross-functional, to learn the different change disciplines that were at play there. And given that today's challenges and issues and opportunities require multifaceted solutions, our change leaders will need to be able to speak different languages of change as well. And I'll show you just a couple of illustrations and then ask you what languages you know today. Here is an illustration of a multilingual change leader in terms of the change discipline languages they speak. This person speaks Lean Six Sigma, data, design thinking, project management, and change management. A second example where the primary language is change management, followed by adult learning, org design, facilitation, and project management. Now, we have discussed and named and identified a tremendous number of change capabilities in organizations right now. My poll question to you, my first one here is this. What is your change discipline L1? That's the first change language that you were exposed to or learned. In linguistics, that's often called L1. So what is that very first change language that you were exposed to or you learned when you stepped into the space of organizational change? I saw adult learning come up there first. We see a lot of Lean, Six Sigma, continuous learning, human-centered design, improvement. And to me, this is the richness of bringing all of these different change disciplines together, is that each of them bring unique experience, expertise, and perspective. Here's my second question for you. How many change discipline languages would you estimate that you know? You don't have to be fluent in them. Maybe you're conversant or can recognize a couple of words. Is it, just that one change discipline language so far? Maybe it's 2 change discipline languages. We started to kind of add our second language. 3 to 4 languages, you're a little ways into your professional journey, you've had some experience and on different initiatives and started to add languages that help you solve multifaceted challenges. 4% of us have over 8 languages in our belt. You're the polymaths of the group. Real quick, I'll have you do this one. What other change? Actually, I'm going to skip this one for the sake of time. You probably have a lot of other change disciplines you can speak, but I'm going to leave you with this phrase, ancora imparo. It is Italian and loosely translates to "yet I am still learning." It's allegedly Michelangelo's last words. So here's one of the smartest beings to ever grace the planet. And on his way out, he says, "Yet I am still learning." And so I figured if Michelangelo can embrace always learning, so can I. It's kind of how I got through 2020 was ancora imparo. But I do want to ask you this question. What other change discipline languages are you curious about learning? What do you want to learn for you? I'd imagine your organization has some languages it would like you to learn as part of the organizational performance. But what are some of those change discipline languages that you are interested in learning? Because if Michelangelo can embrace on the way out, "yet I am still learning," then every one of us has an opportunity to learn every single day. Six Sigma, behavioral economics, some good data analytics in there. Project management, change management, all kinds of disciplines our organizations need to position themselves for success. So I want to thank you for the time and engagement today. Your organization is standing at the doorstep of change like it never has before. And as a change agent, you matter, you are valued, and you add value. And the way you add value is by bringing the expertise, experience, perspectives, tools of your change capability and starting to engage and connect with and learn and work with and through the rest that are part of that change ecosystem. I'll leave these key takeaways up on the screen, and I know we've got about 3 minutes for questions, so I'm going to jump over to the question pane to see if we have any good, or not good, any questions that we want to tackle. So Sam, any questions that we want to tackle?
Yes, hi, thank you so much for this. So we do have a question. Someone didn't quite understand what you're supposed to do with the prompt questions for how to engage us. Is that something you can address real quick?
Yeah, great. So that was the bottom row of our alignment framework. And so the way we would have this happen, let's say we have project management, change management, and process improvement around the table. Each of the disciplines would come up with a question or two that the project team, by asking and answering, would be able to size up when and how much of that discipline they could have get support from. So for project management, my prompt questions would be around the complexity of the technical solution. If project management is around managing cost and scope and time to deliver the deliverables we need, then the complexity of the time, the scope, the cost is going to impact how much project management we need. Continuous process improvement. I might ask a first question like, is the process even documented and mapped yet? Because if it's not, we haven't even gotten started. So that would be the thinking behind those prompt questions.
Excellent, thank you. And then just real quick, someone's wondering, what was the name of the band in that picture again?
Great question. The band is called the Avett Brothers, A-V-E-T-T, out in Concord, North Carolina, and they're the best. Because here's the thing, when you go to a live show, you appreciate that they are taking you through a cerebral and emotional experience for that hour and a half, in the same way that we can pay attention to how we take people through those change journeys too. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tim, very much. We're so glad that you could join us and answer some of those questions.